All righty. It looks like it's time to get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining our live workshop today. My name is Isaac, and I'll be the lead instructor for the workshop. And today's topic is going to be how to add language translation to your software application. Okay, so a couple things to mention before we get started today. The first one being is you might have noticed I muted everyone's microphones, and that was intentional because we're actually not going to be asking any questions until after the lecture. We want to make sure we get through the application build first, and then at the end of it, we'll open the floor for a few minutes so you can ask whatever questions you have. Another thing to mention is that we're recording this lecture. So maybe if we're going a little too fast or you didn't quite catch something, just remember that you can always watch it later. And we're going to make that recording link available to you in your student dashboard right after this. Okay, so diving right in, let's go and discuss what technologies we'll be using to build out our language translation. Okay, so starting off, we're going to be using jQuery as our client-side library to build out our front-end logic. And then we're going to be using the Google Translate API to translate our web page text. And then we're going to use this open source library jQuery i18n to translate our client-side text. Okay, so to get started, go ahead and navigate to this URL here for the language translation starter kit. We'll go ahead and we'll copy that to our clipboard. And we'll open up our command line. I'm going to change directories onto my desktop. Then I'm going to run the command git clone. And I'm going to paste in that URL. Okay. So from here, I'm going to change directories into language starter kit. And let's open it up inside of our text editor here. Okay. Language starter kit, open. Okay, so now let's just take a moment to go through the starter kit and discuss, what's going on in the file tree here. Okay, so the first thing we have is an index.html file. And this should look familiar to you, right? It's, the base web page, for loading in our application. Okay, so you might notice it's pretty empty at the moment. The only thing that's been added for the starter kit is the links. Okay, so we got a couple CDNs here. Okay, and CDNs are just pointing to a file on the internet, right, hosted somewhere and loading in that source code. Okay, so this is bringing in the Google Translate API. This is going to allow us to translate our page text. And then this link right here is bringing in jQuery. And jQuery is going to allow us to run all of our client-side operations. And finally, we've got our app.js file here, which this is just connecting to our custom script here. This is this is where we will write all of our translation logic. Okay, so to get started, let's go ahead and let's start by setting up the language translation for our web page text. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an element. I'm going to go and let's create a div. Okay, and then we're going to give this an ID. And that way we can target this element. And this element is going to be used as our dropdown. And the dropdown is going to have all the different languages of the world we can choose from to translate our web page text into. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this my Google _translate element. Okay. So from here, let's go ahead and let's create some web page text which we can translate. So I'll just do an H1. Let's say there would be a title here, and then let's do a simple paragraph, and we'll just say some text. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this. And repeat that a few times. Okay. So from here, let's go ahead and let's save all and let's launch this in our browser. Okay, so today I'm going to be using the HTTP server to launch my application. And if you don't have any servers installed, you can install one really easy by just entering the command npm install -g http-server. Okay, and once you've installed it, you can go ahead and you navigate to your root directory and you run the command http-server. And now it's going to serve our application on local port 8080. So let's go ahead and navigate there. Okay, so we'll say 8080. Okay, and as we can see, we've got, simple web page. Okay, so let's go ahead and inspect. As we can see, no errors, nothing like that. Okay, so now the next step is we need to initialize the Google translation to where this will appear as a dropdown, and then we can transform this text. So let's go ahead and set up a function for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's label this function Google translate element. Oops, it's a mouthful. There we go. Element init. Okay. So this is a built-in function from our Google Translate API to where when the page loads, we can then initialize the base language. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's set that up for English. Okay, so we can go ahead and we can say new Google, Google dot translate. Okay, and then we will run the translate element method. Okay, and this is going to take in 2 arguments. The first argument is going to be the actual page text language we want to load in. Okay, so in our case, it would be English. Okay, so let's say page language equals English. Okay, and if you're not sure what your specific language code is, you can always go look up language codes on the internet. And for English, it just happens to be EN. Okay, so the second argument we're going to pass in, okay, is what ID we're targeting. Okay, and in our case, we're going to target the Google Translate element ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and pass that in as the second argument. Google Translate element. Okay. So let's see here. Yeah, those IDs match up. So now when our page loads, we should be loading in a dropdown. And when we select a different language from the dropdown, it should transform all of this page text to that given language. So let's go ahead and let's save all, and let's refresh our browser. Okay. So as you can see, now we have a little translation dropdown. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to Arabic. Okay. Now as we can see, just like that, our page is now showing in Arabic. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the original. So now we know it's pretty simple to, change our page text. Okay, but now we need to take into account what happens, for the input. Okay, because for the output, we can handle it here, just by having them select what language they want the text output in. But if they input data in their, native language, we want to translate that to English before it hits our servers. Okay, so that's where we're going to be using this jQuery i18n library to translate our client-side text. So to get started, we need to install this library. And to install it, I'm going to be using the Bower package manager. And if you don't have Bower, you can go to bower.io and install it for free. Once you've installed it, we can come to our project and we can begin the process by creating a bower.json file. How we're going to do this is we run the command bower init. From here, it's going to ask us a bunch of questions about our application, and all of these are arbitrary at the moment, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter all the way through. And as we can see, it generates this, bower.json file, which again, at this time, Doesn't affect any of the functionality of our app. It just contains metadata about our app. So now I'm going to use this to track my installations. Okay, and how I can do that is I'm going to use -- save after I run my bower install command. So it goes like this. We can say bower install jQuery -i18n -- save, enter. Okay, and now you'll notice that we have our components over here, and then we have the dependency listed for the translation library. Okay, so now we need to link this within our main document here. Okay, so I'm going to go and open up our components, jQuery i18n, and then go to the source code. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and copy the path for that library. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right under jQuery, but above my app.js, because I'm going to be using this library within the script here. So we can go ahead and we could say script with a source pointing to that library. Except I don't need to reference, the entire path. I just need to start at our components. Okay, and then it will use the root from there. Okay, so now we're loading this in. We can go ahead, we can save that. And let's head back to our app.js file. And now we need to use jQuery to initialize this logic when the DOM is loaded. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say bling document.ready. Okay, and whenever the page is loaded in, we will then run our translation logic. Okay, so the first step to using the jQuery i18n library is to set up a dictionary, okay? And then it will be able to translate the given words that are passed in based on your dictionary, okay? So, for example, let's go ahead and let's set up a variable, and we'll call it my dictionary. Oops, let's spell that. I don't think I spelled that right. There we go, dictionary. And then I'm going to put a JSON key value form kind of layout here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we'll say the key will be the foreign text, and then the value will be the English translation. Okay, so let's say for Spanish, the greeting for hello is hola. Okay, and the English translation will be hello. Okay, and then let's do like the German greeting is hallo, and then the English translation for that is hello. Okay, and so now we've got some basic logic set up here. Now we need to set up an input for our user interface to where we can input some data and translate it based on this library. So I'm going to come here and let's go ahead and let's add an input. Okay, and this input will be type of text. And we'll do placeholder equal to greeting. And then let's give it an ID. The ID will be equal to user greeting. Okay, and now we need a button to where we can, submit that greeting and we can translate it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a button here, and then we'll go ahead and we will say translate. Okay, and then let's give this button ID so we can add a click event listener to it. So I'll just go ahead and call it button. Okay, so we save that. Let's go back to our browser, refresh. Oops, looks like I forgot to load my server again. So let's just go ahead and do that one more time. Okay, run again. Let's see here. Ooh, looks like I forgot the Y in my .ready function. There we go. Okay, save that. Let's refresh. Okay, no errors now, and now we have a way to translate a greeting. Okay, so from here, let's go back to our app.js, And let's load in this dictionary. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we are going to say bling.i18n.load. And then all we have to do from here is we just need to pass in the dictionary, which in our case, we called my dictionary. Okay, so now this is loaded in. Now we need to target the values from our input here whenever the button is clicked. Okay, so let's go ahead and create an event listener for the button. Okay, so we'll say let button equals bling. Then we'll target this button by its ID. So from here, we can add the event listener. The event listener will be called click. Whenever that event happens, we're going to run this callback function. Okay, and at this time, we can translate the text inside of the user greeting input here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's use the translation method here. So we'll say translation equals, and then we will say bling i18n dot, and then we're going to use the underscore method, which is same thing as translate. We're going to pass in the word we want to translate. In our case, the word is going to be inside the input value. So I'm going to target input value by saying bling hashtag user greeting, and then we'll use the dot val method. Okay, so from here, let's console log our translation. So we save all, and looks like our server's still running. So let's refresh here, and let's try passing in a foreign text. So we'll say hola, translate, and as we can see, translates to hello. Okay, we'll do the same thing for hello, translates to hello. So now we have a way to not only control the output of the language, but also the input of the language as well. Okay, and just keep in mind, this is one of many approaches. There's several companies that offer several different libraries, APIs, and such that you can use for language translation. This is just, one of the more simple approaches. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's now save our source code. Okay, so we're going to do this with GitHub. So the first thing we need to do after we save everything is we need to remove our .git folder here. Okay, and if you're not seeing your .git folder for some moment, all you need to do is go to your settings. Okay, so that's going to be under preferences. Okay, and then you just need to make sure you have the file exclusion for the Git folder here, and that way it will show up in your file tree. Okay, and once you see it show up, we can just right click and delete that. Okay, and now we can create a new Git folder for our completed project here. Okay, so I'm going to go to my GitHub account, and I'm going to go to add a new repository. And let's go ahead and we'll call this language workshop, except the date today is the 17th. Okay, so from here, we'll go and create repository. I'm just going to copy the remote origin here, and we'll start the process. Okay, so we'll say git init, git add. Okay, that adds all of our changes, and we'll add a commit message. And I'll just call this my initial commit. Then I'll add the remote origin, which is where we're pushing our code to. So I'll just hit paste here. And then I'll hit git push origin master. Enter. Okay, so now we can go and we can verify that our source code has been saved to our GitHub. Okay, so now I'd like to open up the floor for a few minutes, and I'd like to see if anyone has any questions over what we just went over. Okay, so your mics are unmuted. Feel free to ask any questions if you do have them. Okay, no questions today. Going once? Going twice? All right, no questions. That's okay. Thanks again, everyone, for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day, and happy coding out there. See you later.